On March 17, 2024, Rebecca Torres moved into apartment 4B at the Riverside complex in Seattle. Her apartment faced directly across the courtyard from apartment 4C, exactly 20 feet away. Through her living room window, she could see directly into her neighbor's apartment. And through his window, he could see into hers. For the first week, Rebecca barely noticed him. Just glimpses of a man living alone, watching TV, making dinner. Normal apartment life. Then on March 24th, she woke at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. Walked past her living room window and saw him standing at his window, in complete darkness, staring directly at her apartment. She froze. He didn't move, just stood there, watching. She convinced herself he was sleepwalking or looking at something else. She went back to bed. The next night, 3 a.m., she got up for water. He was there again. Same position. Same darkness. Same fixed stare. Night 3. Night 4. Night 5. Every night at 3 a.m. exactly, he was standing at his window, watching her apartment. Never moving. Never looking away. Rebecca started closing her curtains. But that made it worse. Because then she couldn't see him. Couldn't verify he was there. Couldn't watch him watching her. On night 14, Rebecca decided to confront him. Knocked on his door at 9 a.m. No answer. Tried again in the evening. No answer. Called the building manager. The manager said apartment 4C had been vacant for 3 weeks. No tenant. No one living there. But Rebecca could still see him every night. Standing at the window. Watching. Getting closer to the glass each night. Until on night 21. She woke at 3 a.m. and he wasn't at his window anymore. He was at hers. Outside her window. On the 4th floor. With no balcony. No fire escape. Nothing to stand on. Just floating in the air. Pressed against her glass. Staring in. Smiling. This is the complete account of what happened at the Riverside complex. The story of the neighbor who couldn't exist. The man in the empty apartment. The watcher who got closer every night, until he wasn't watching from across the courtyard anymore. He was watching from inside. Rebecca Torres needed a fresh start. At 29, she'd just ended a 5-year relationship, quit a toxic job, and decided Seattle was the perfect place to rebuild her life. The Riverside complex seemed ideal. Modern building. Safe neighborhood. Good rent. Her apartment was on the 4th floor with a view of the courtyard and the building opposite. Through her living room window, she could see directly into the apartments across from her. Most had their curtains closed. A few showed glimpses of normal life. People cooking dinner, watching TV, living their lives. Rebecca's apartment faced apartment 4C directly. 20 feet away. Perfect parallel view. The first week, she barely noticed the man who lived there. Just peripheral awareness of someone in the opposite apartment. Male. Lived alone. Watched a lot of TV. Typical single-person routine. Rebecca was too busy unpacking, job hunting, trying to establish some kind of normalcy in her disrupted life. The neighbor was just background. Part of the new environment she was adjusting to. Then came the first incident. March 24th, 2024. Rebecca woke at 3 a.m. needing the bathroom. Her apartment was dark except for the faint orange glow of a streetlight filtering through the curtains. She walked down the hallway, past the living room, toward the bathroom. As she passed the living room window, movement caught her eye. She stopped. Looked across the courtyard. The neighbor's apartment was completely dark. No lights. No TV glow. Just darkness. And standing at the window, perfectly still, was a silhouette. Man-shaped. Facing her apartment. Not moving at all. Not even the slight sway of someone standing. Just absolute stillness. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. She stood frozen, watching the motionless figure watching her apartment. After 30 seconds, she convinced herself he must be sleepwalking. Or looking at something outside. Or maybe it wasn't even a person. Maybe it was furniture, a coat rack, something that looked human-shaped in the darkness. She went to the bathroom, came back, looked again. Still there. Same position. Hadn't moved a millimeter. Rebecca closed her bedroom curtains and went back to sleep, trying to shake the uncomfortable feeling of being watched. The next night, purely by coincidence, she woke at 3:07 a.m. Thirsty. Went to the kitchen for water. Walked past the living room window. He was there again. Same position. Same perfect stillness. Same darkness. Like he'd never moved from the previous night. Rebecca felt her heartbeat quicken. This was weird. 2 nights in a row, he was standing at his window in the middle of the night. She turned on her living room light, making herself visible, hoping the light would make him realize she could see him, make him move, react, do something human. He didn't move. The light illuminated her apartment, but did nothing to the darkness across the courtyard. He remained a silhouette. Watching. Rebecca turned off the light and went back to bed, more disturbed now. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't sleepwalking. This was deliberate. Night 3, Rebecca set an alarm for 3 a.m. Forced herself to wake up. Got up quietly, carefully approached the living room window from an angle where she could see out but wouldn't be directly visible. He was there, waiting. Same position he'd been in the previous 2 nights. She watched him for 5 full minutes. He never moved, never shifted weight, never looked away. Just stood there in absolute darkness, facing her window, watching. Rebecca felt a wave of anger mixed with fear. Who was this creep? What was his problem? She grabbed her phone, took photos of the silhouette at the window, documented the timestamp. 3:04 a.m. When she checked the photos later, they showed nothing. The apartment across the courtyard was too dark. Her camera only captured blackness with maybe the faint suggestion of a window frame. The silhouette was invisible in the photos, though she could see it clearly with her naked eye. Night 4, she decided to document differently. Set up her phone camera, recording toward the window at 2:55 a.m. Waited. At exactly 3 a.m., movement in the recording. The silhouette appeared at the window. Not walking into frame. Not gradually becoming visible. Just suddenly there, like he'd materialized in position. Rebecca played the footage back frame by frame. 1 frame. Empty window. Next frame. Figure standing there. No transition. No movement. Just instant appearance. This wasn't normal. This was wrong. By night 7, Rebecca had documented a full week of the 3 a.m. watcher. Every single night, he appeared at exactly 3 a.m. Never early. Never late. And he stood there until sunrise, when morning light revealed the apartment across the courtyard was completely empty. No furniture. No lights. No signs of habitation. Rebecca started asking other residents about the neighbor in 4C. Most said they'd never noticed anyone there. A few mentioned seeing someone occasionally, but couldn't describe them. One elderly woman said she thought the apartment was vacant, had been for months. Rebecca contacted the building manager. Asked about the tenant in 4C. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, checked her records. 4C has been empty since March 1st, Patricia said. Previous tenant moved out. We're showing it to prospective renters, but haven't found anyone yet. Why? I've been seeing someone in there. Every night. At 3 a.m. Patricia's expression shifted from professional courtesy to concern. That's not possible. The apartment is locked. I have the only key. And I've been in there myself. It's completely empty. Can we check it right now? Patricia hesitated, then agreed. They walked across the courtyard, up to the 4th floor of Building C, to apartment 4C. Patricia unlocked the door, pushed it open. The apartment was indeed empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No belongings. Nothing. Just bare walls, carpet, and windows. The window facing Rebecca's apartment was clean, undisturbed, with no signs anyone had ever stood there. See, Patricia said, nobody's been living here. But Rebecca noticed something. On the floor directly in front of the window, barely visible in the carpet, were indentations. Like someone had stood there for so long their feet had compressed the carpet fibers. 2 shallow depressions, exactly where the silhouette stood every night. What's that? Rebecca pointed. Patricia looked. Frowned. Probably from the previous tenant. Furniture marks or something. Those are footprints. Someone's been standing there. Rebecca, I understand you're new to the building and maybe feeling anxious living alone, but I assure you no one is in this apartment. I'll have maintenance check the locks, make sure everything's secure, but there's no one here. Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to show her documentation, her videos, her timestamp photos. But looking at Patricia's skeptical expression, she realized how it would sound. She'd sound paranoid. Delusional. Okay, Rebecca said quietly. Thank you for checking. That night, Rebecca closed all her curtains. If she couldn't see him, maybe he wasn't really there. Maybe she'd been seeing things. Stress from the move. Anxiety about living alone. Her mind filling empty windows with imagined threats. But at 3 a.m., she woke anyway. Compulsion pulled her to the living room. She needed to check. Needed to know. She pulled aside one curtain. Just an inch. Just enough to peek across the courtyard. He was there. In the empty apartment. Standing at the window in absolute darkness. But now he was closer to the glass. Pressed up against it. His face. She could see his face for the first time. Pale and expressionless. Looking directly at where Rebecca stood hidden behind her curtain. Like he knew exactly where she was even though she couldn't possibly be visible. Rebecca dropped the curtain. Heart pounding. This wasn't her imagination. This wasn't stress. Something was in that empty apartment. Something that appeared every night at 3 a.m. Something that was getting closer to the window with each passing night. And something that knew she was watching back. Rebecca stopped sleeping. Or tried to. But every night at 3 a.m., she woke regardless of how exhausted she was. Like her body had developed an internal alarm. A biological imperative to check the window. And every night he was there. Closer than before. By night 10, his face was pressed directly against the glass, features distorted by the pressure. By night 12, his hands were visible, pressed on either side of his face, fingers spread wide. Rebecca documented everything. Photos, videos, time-stamped recordings. Built a case file that proved something impossible was happening. She researched the building's history. Found newspaper articles about the Riverside complex. Nothing unusual. Standard apartment building built in 2018. No deaths. No accidents. No reported hauntings. She researched the previous tenant of 4C. Found a name through public records. David Morrison. Researched him. He'd lived there for 2 years, moved out March 1st. No social media presence. No digital footprint beyond basic public records. Rebecca called the number listed for David Morrison. Disconnected. Tried to find him through work records. Nothing. He'd simply moved and disappeared from traceable existence. But Rebecca found something else. A post on a Reddit paranormal forum from February 28, 2024. Username, tired of watching. The post read, I'm moving out tomorrow. Can't take it anymore. For the past 3 months, I've been seeing someone in the apartment across from mine. Every night at 3 a.m. Standing at the window. Watching. Building manager says it's empty. Checked myself, completely vacant. But he's still there. Every night. Getting closer. Tonight, he was pressed against the glass. Tomorrow I'm gone. If anyone else moves into the Riverside complex in Seattle, apartment 4C, don't look across the courtyard at night. Don't acknowledge what you see. It gets worse when you acknowledge it. The post had been deleted by moderators as low-effort scaremongering, but Rebecca found it in cached archives. David Morrison had seen it too. Had experienced the same thing. And he'd fled. Rebecca read through the comments before deletion. Others had experienced similar phenomena. Different buildings. Different cities. Always the same pattern. Apartment with clear view into another apartment. Empty apartment across the way. Figure appears at 3 a.m. Every night gets closer. Over time only visible to one person. Doesn't show up on cameras properly. Building management denies anyone is there. One commenter had written, it's not a ghost. It's something that exists in the space between occupied and unoccupied. It watches people who live alone. Feeds on their isolation. If you acknowledge it, you give it power. If you watch it watching you, you create a connection. And once the connection is strong enough, it doesn't need to stay across the courtyard anymore. Rebecca's blood ran cold reading that final line. Because she'd been watching him every night for 2 weeks. Creating a connection. Making him stronger. That night, Rebecca tried a new strategy. She would not look. Would not check the window. Would not acknowledge his presence. At 3 a.m., she woke. The compulsion to check was overwhelming, like an itch in her brain that demanded scratching. She forced herself to stay in bed, to not get up, to not look. But she heard something. A sound she'd never noticed before. A soft tapping. Rhythmic. Regular. Tap. 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 Coming from her living room. Rebecca tried to ignore it. Pulled pillow over her head. But the tapping continued. Patient. Persistent. Not getting louder, but not stopping. At 3:27 a.m., she broke. Had to know. Had to check. She got up, walked to the living room, looked across the courtyard. He wasn't at his window anymore. The window of apartment 4C was empty. Dark. No figure. No watcher. For the first time in 2 weeks, the window was unoccupied. Rebecca felt a surge of relief. He was gone. Whatever he was, he'd moved on or disappeared or... The tapping came again. Directly behind her. Rebecca spun around. Her living room was empty. But the tapping continued. Tap. 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 From her own window. From inside her apartment. She approached the window slowly, heart hammering. Looked at the glass. Saw her own reflection in the darkness outside. And behind her reflection, barely visible, a silhouette standing in her living room. She turned. Nothing there. Looked back at the reflection. The silhouette remained, standing exactly where he always stood in his apartment, but now the reflection showed him standing in her apartment. Behind her, Rebecca ran to her bedroom, slammed the door, pushed furniture against it, grabbed her phone to call 911. But what would she say? There's a reflection in my window that shows someone who isn't actually there? She called anyway. Got through to dispatch. Started explaining. The operator's voice became concerned, suggested Rebecca might be experiencing a mental health crisis, offered to send an ambulance. Rebecca hung up. She sounded crazy. She knew she sounded crazy. At 4 a.m., the tapping stopped. Rebecca waited until sunrise, then cautiously left her bedroom. The living room was empty. Normal. Sunlight streaming through windows. No silhouettes. No watchers. Nothing. But on her window, on the inside of the glass, were handprints. Clear, distinct prints from hands pressing against the glass from inside the apartment. From her side of the window. Rebecca called a locksmith. Changed all her locks. Installed a security camera inside her apartment, facing the window. Set it to record 24/7. That night, she stayed at a hotel. Watched the security camera feed from her phone. At 3 a.m., the camera showed her empty apartment. Normal. Nothing unusual. But the angle was wrong. The camera pointed at the window from across the room. It couldn't see the window's reflection. Couldn't see what might be visible in the glass, but not in the room itself. Rebecca realized she had to go back. Had to see. Had to know. She drove back to the Riverside complex, arrived at 3:45 a.m., took the elevator to the 4th floor, unlocked her apartment door. Everything was normal. The security camera was still recording. The apartment was empty. Rebecca approached the window. Looked at the reflection in the glass. He was standing directly behind her. So close she should be able to feel his breath. But when she turned around, nothing was there. In the reflection, he smiled and reached forward. And the reflection's hand passed through the glass, becoming real, becoming solid, grabbing Rebecca's shoulder from behind with a grip like ice. Rebecca screamed, spun around, struck out at nothing. The hand released. She ran for the door, but it was locked. From the inside, with the key still in it but refusing to turn, she turned back to the window. In the reflection, he was closer now. Had walked through from his dimension into hers. Existed in the reflection, but not in reality. Yet. The reflection smiled wider. Too wide. Mouth opening impossibly large. And began to step forward, out of the reflection, into the real apartment. Rebecca grabbed a chair, smashed her own window. Glass exploded outward and inward. The reflection shattered into fragments. The grip on her shoulder released. She looked around her apartment. Empty. No figure. No watcher. But across the courtyard, in the window of apartment 4C, the silhouette stood, watching. And he was smiling, because he knew something Rebecca was just beginning to realize. Breaking the window didn't stop him. It just gave him more ways to enter. Through broken glass. Through cracks. Through any reflection that could show him. And Rebecca's apartment had mirrors. Phone screens. TV screens. Any reflective surface could now become a doorway. She'd made it worse. Rebecca moved out the next day. Broke her lease. Lost her security deposit. Didn't care. She wasn't spending another night in that apartment. She moved in with her sister across town. Explained that the apartment had been broken into, that she didn't feel safe. Her sister accepted the explanation without questioning the lack of police report or stolen items. For 3 days, Rebecca felt safe. Slept normally. Number 3 a.m. wake-ups. No watchers. No silhouettes. She'd escaped. Then on the 4th night, she woke at 3 a.m. Old habit. Body clock still adjusted to the pattern. She was in her sister's guest room. No windows facing other apartments. Just a view of the street and trees. Safe. But she heard tapping. Soft. Rhythmic. Patient. Rebecca got up, heart sinking. Walked into the hallway. The tapping was coming from the bathroom. She pushed open the bathroom door. The tapping was coming from the mirror above the sink. In the mirror, barely visible in the darkness, was the silhouette. Standing behind her reflection. Not in the bathroom. In the mirror dimension. Reaching forward, Rebecca slammed the door, ran back to the guest room. But her phone screen showed a reflection when it locked. And in that reflection, for just a split second, the silhouette was there. He'd followed her. Not to the new location, but through reflections. Through any surface that could show her own image. Rebecca researched desperately. Found more accounts. More people who'd experienced the watcher. The pattern was always the same. Person leaves a lone empty apartment / building visible from their window. Figure appears at 3 a.m. in empty space. Figure gets closer over weeks. Person acknowledges / watches figure begins appearing in reflections. Figure crosses from reflection into reality. Person disappears or dies or goes insane. But Rebecca found something else. A pattern in the accounts. The watcher always targeted people living alone who were already isolated. Already lonely. Already vulnerable. And all the accounts mention the same escape method. Don't be alone. The watcher can only fully manifest when you're isolated. If someone else is present, if you're not the only consciousness in the space, he remains trapped in reflections. Rebecca told her sister everything. Her sister was skeptical, but concerned enough to agree to stay close. For 3 nights, Rebecca's sister slept in the same room. And for 3 nights, the watcher appeared in mirrors, but couldn't emerge. Stayed trapped in the reflection dimension. Watching. Waiting. On the 4th night, Rebecca's sister had to leave for a work trip. Would be gone for 2 days. I'll be fine, Rebecca lied. It was just stress. I'm feeling better. But she wasn't fine. And at 3 a.m. that night, alone in her sister's house, she woke to tapping on every reflective surface simultaneously. Windows, mirrors, phone screen, TV, picture frames, all tapping in perfect rhythm. Rebecca ran to the living room, grabbed a blanket, threw it over the TV, covered the bathroom mirror, turned her phone face down, eliminated every reflection she could find. The tapping stopped. Silence. Rebecca waited, breathing hard. Then came a voice. Soft. Whispered. Coming from everywhere and nowhere. You can't cover them all. You can't hide from what shows you yourself. Every surface is a window. Every reflection is a door. And I'm already inside. Rebecca looked at the darkened TV screen. The blanket covering it had slipped slightly. In the small exposed section of screen, she could see the reflection of the room. And in that reflection, the silhouette stood in the center of the room, right where Rebecca was standing, occupying the same space. In the reflection, getting ready to cross over, Rebecca grabbed her keys, ran for the door, got in her car, drove aimlessly through Seattle's empty 3 a.m. streets. She couldn't go anywhere with mirrors, couldn't stay anywhere alone, couldn't look at any reflection without risking seeing him there. At a red light, she glanced at her rearview mirror. He was in the back seat. In the reflection, leaning forward, Rebecca accelerated through the red light, pulled over, abandoned the car, ran on foot, found a 24-hour diner, bright lights, other people, witnesses. She sat at the counter, ordered coffee she didn't drink, surrounded by late-night workers and insomniacs. Safe. For now. But she caught her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser. And in that curved, distorted reflection, the silhouette stood behind her. Closer than ever. Hand reaching out. Rebecca knocked over the dispenser. The waitress looked at her with concern. You okay, honey? I can't. Is there anywhere with no mirrors? No reflective surfaces. The waitress's concern deepened. Are you in some kind of trouble? Should I call someone? Rebecca laughed. It sounded hysterical even to her own ears. No. No one can help. He's in the reflections. He's everywhere. And he's getting stronger because I keep looking, keep acknowledging him, keep making him more real. The waitress was calling someone. Manager. Maybe police. Rebecca didn't care. She was breaking. The lack of sleep. The constant vigilance. The knowledge that any reflective surface could contain him. She'd been so stupid. She'd watched him for weeks. Given him attention. Power. Belief. And in doing so, she'd made him real enough to cross over. David Morrison had known. Had warned in his deleted post. Don't acknowledge it. Don't watch back. Don't give it power. But Rebecca had done all of those things. And now the watcher was everywhere. In every reflection. Getting closer every time she looked. She had to stop looking. Stop checking. Stop giving him the attention that made him real. But how do you not look at your own reflection? How do you avoid mirrors, windows, screens, water, glass, metal, anything that could show you yourself? You can't. Not completely. Not forever. And he was patient. He'd waited in an empty apartment for weeks. He could wait in reflections forever. Until Rebecca eventually inevitably looked. And when she looked, he'd be there. Reaching out. Crossing over. Becoming real. Rebecca lasted 6 more days. 6 days of avoiding reflections. Living like a vampire. Avoiding mirrors. Eating from paper plates, so she wouldn't see herself in silverware. Keeping her phone face down. Walking with her eyes on the ground to avoid seeing herself in building windows. But on day 7, exhausted and delirious from lack of sleep, she made a mistake. Washed her hands in a public bathroom. Looked up while reaching for paper towels. Saw herself in the mirror. And saw him standing behind her. Not in the reflection anymore. Actually standing behind her. Existing in the same physical space. Half emerged from the mirror dimension. 1 foot still in the reflection, 1 foot in reality. Rebecca screamed, spun around. He was there. Not fully solid. Translucent. Shimmering. But there. Real enough to touch. Real enough to reach for her. She ran. Burst out of the bathroom. People stared. A security guard approached, asking if she was okay. Did you see him? Rebecca gasped. In the bathroom? Did you see him? The guard checked the bathroom. Came back shaking his head. There's no one in there, ma'am. Are you feeling all right? Rebecca looked at her reflection in the building's glass doors. He stood beside her. Fully visible now. Not behind her. Beside her. Like they were standing together. Like he was her companion. Her shadow. Her reflection given form. He smiled. And spoke. The voice was dry. Unused. Like something that hadn't spoken in a very long time. You made me real. Gave me power. Watched me until I became substantial. Thank you. What do you want? Rebecca whispered, not caring that people around her saw her talking to nothing. To exist. I am what lives between occupied and empty, between seen and unseen, between reflection and reality. I exist only when watched by the lonely, only when acknowledged by the isolated. You watched. You acknowledged. You gave me form. Now I can cross over, become real, become flesh. Why me? Why did you choose me? I didn't choose you. You chose me. When you looked for someone in the empty apartment, when you needed to see another person, even just a silhouette in a window, you were so lonely that you turned nothing into something, made me from your need for company. And now I'm here, your companion, forever. Rebecca looked around desperately. The security guard was on his radio, probably calling for mental health services. Other people were keeping their distance, watching the crazy woman talking to herself. But in every reflective surface, windows, phones, glasses, watches, Rebecca could see him standing beside her, getting more solid with each passing second, becoming real through her attention, her fear, her acknowledgement. If I stop looking, Rebecca said, if I ignore you, will you disappear? Too late. I'm already real enough. You can't unsee me now.
Can't unknow that I exist.
Every time you catch a reflection, you'll see me there. Every mirror will show both of us. We're connected now.
Bound.
I exist because you watch. And you'll watch because I exist. Forever. Rebecca understood then. This was her punishment for watching. For giving attention to something that shouldn't exist. For making something real through observation. She ran home to her sister's house. Found every mirror. Every reflective surface. Smashed them all. Destroyed every window, every screen, every piece of glass. Her sister came home to find the house destroyed, and Rebecca huddled in a dark corner, eyes tightly closed. I can't look, Rebecca said. If I look, I'll see him. And if I see him, he becomes more real. So I can't look. Never again. Her sister tried to help. Got her to a hospital. Psychiatric evaluation. They said she was experiencing psychotic delusions. Visual hallucinations. Gave her medication. Therapy.
Treatment.
But the medication didn't stop her from seeing him. The therapy didn't make him less real. Because he wasn't a hallucination. He was the result of looking too long into emptiness and making that emptiness into something. Rebecca was institutionalized.
For her own safety, they said.
Kept in a room with no mirrors. But she could see him in the window glass. In her water glass. In the screen of the TV they provided. Always there. Always watching. Always getting more solid. And at 3 a.m. every night, she woke to see him sitting on the edge of her bed. Not in a reflection anymore. Actually sitting there. Real enough to create an indentation in the mattress. Real enough that when he reached out to touch her face, she felt the ice-cold pressure of his fingers. Soon, he whispered. Soon I'll be solid enough. Real enough. And then I won't need you to watch me. I'll exist on my own. And I can do to others what you did to me. Make them watch. Make them acknowledge. Make them create companions from nothing. Build an army of watchers. One lonely person at a time. Rebecca tried to tell the doctors. Tried to warn them. But they just increased her medication. Said she was resistant to treatment. Suggested long-term care. 3 months after moving into apartment 4B at the Riverside complex, Rebecca Torres disappeared from her hospital room. No signs of forced exit. No evidence of how she left. Just gone. The hospital staff found one thing. A message scratched into the wall with her fingernails. Don't look at empty apartments. Don't watch what watches back. Don't make something from nothing. The watchers are real. And they're patient. And they're waiting in every empty window for someone lonely enough to notice them. Once you watch, you can't stop. Once you acknowledge, they become real. I'm one of them now. Trapped between reflection and reality. Watching. Waiting. For the next person who looks too long into emptiness and sees a face looking back. April 15th, 2024. Sarah Chin moved into apartment 4B at the Riverside complex in Seattle. Perfect location.
Good rent.
Safe neighborhood. Her apartment faced directly across the courtyard from apartment 4C. Through her living room window, she could see directly into the opposite apartment. Completely empty. No tenant. No furniture. Nothing. For the first week, Sarah barely noticed. Too busy unpacking, settling in, starting her new job. Then, on April 21st, she woke at 3 a.m., walked past her living room window to get water,
And saw them.
two silhouettes standing at the window of apartment 4C. One male, one female, both in complete darkness, both perfectly still, both facing her apartment, watching. Sarah stood frozen, looking at the watchers. They didn't move, didn't react, just stood there in the empty apartment that the building manager had assured her was vacant. She should look away, should close her curtains, should ignore them. But she was curious and lonely, new to the city, living alone. And there was something almost comforting about seeing other people, even silhouettes, even in an empty apartment. At least she wasn't completely alone. Sarah watched them for 5 minutes before going back to bed. Tomorrow she'd ask about the neighbors in 4C, find out who they were, maybe introduce herself. Tomorrow. But tomorrow night at 3 a.m., she woke again. Anne looked, and they were closer to the window. And the night after, closer still. And Sarah kept watching, kept acknowledging, kept making them more real with her attention. Because she didn't know what Rebecca had learned too late. The watchers are patient. And the watchers are growing. And every lonely person who looks too long at an empty apartment is creating another one. One watcher at a time. One reflection at a time. Until there are more watchers than watched. More reflections than people. More emptiness given form than actual human beings. And the watchers will be everywhere. In every empty apartment. Every vacant building. Every dark window. Waiting for someone lonely enough to notice them. Someone isolated enough to watch. Someone vulnerable enough to turn nothing into something. And once you watch, once you acknowledge, once you make them real, they never leave.